week 48, and we're on day 2. As we continue in the first of Paul's letter to the Corinthians, we look at 1 Corinthians chapters 12 through 14. And we see that Paul continues to address questions that come up that are related to worship. Another one that was a big part of this letter to the Corinthians was the idea of the Lord's Supper. Now, you have to remember that in the first century, there wasn't a weekend as we know it. The Jews, for centuries, had been observing a Sabbath on what we call Saturday as a means of worshiping God. It had been prescribed by God in their commandments, and they were one of the few cultures that did any such thing. And it was accepted within the Roman Empire that the Jews could continue to observe Saturday as a Sabbath where they did not work. But what that meant is that Sunday would have been the first day of the week and therefore the first workday as well. Now, in a church that had both independent and wealthy free people as well as slaves, that could cause some issues, in particular because the new Christians chose to worship on Sundays, that being the day that Jesus had been resurrected from the dead. And so they chose to observe worship on Sundays. But it's a work day, and so that meant that the slaves and those who worked for a living would have to wait for worship until the end of their workday. Well, those who were wealthy and did not need to work could take the day off. And what they found is that the rich and relatively idle would go ahead and enjoy worship and eating a full meal, and there would be nothing left for the slaves and the working class when they came to participate in worship. And so we see a breaking, a difference in the class structure, even within the church, that was very much about there is no longer slave or free, but we are all equal under Jesus Christ. And so that becomes an issue, and Paul tries to address that here in this letter. He also identifies the idea that we are each uniquely gifted with spiritual gifts, and not everyone has the same ones. But he also points out that whatever spiritual gifts we do have are meant to be used in love, not to lord over someone else that you have a better spiritual gift, and that there is no better, best, even worse spiritual gifts, but all of them are gifts from God, so that we might do the will of God and share the love of Christ with anyone we meet.